I laugh now when I'm 50 very shortly. I played my last game of rugby when I was 39. I haven't retired. I'm just choosing not to play.
Yeah, I haven't played the last 2 seasons of football. And it's the same thing. I haven't retired, but
I haven't retired because I've still got that footy bag with my boots in it. Still sitting there. It's travelled a lot with me. It's travelled to different places. It's moved from Sydney up to the mid-north coast of New South Wales, and
Yeah. Today's guest on the Sport is Life podcast, Craig McCormack, has worked across a number of different industries. He's been a landscape gardener. He's been in strength and conditioning, which took him into the world of elite sport, working in correctional facilities, and then also learning to train people on some of the challenges that are experienced in those areas, how to improve. So he's got a really significant body of work of study for dealing with setbacks, things like PTSD in all of those different areas that I described, including your sport, your work, everything, and then how you're actually going to apply different processes and strategies to be able to come out the other side. I also want you to listen out because he's got some great ideas about teamwork and how you can have a better connection with the people in your team, whether that's at home, your family, or in the workplace, or of course, in your sport. I'm Ian Hawkins, and this is Sport is Life. The purpose of sport, as I see it, is to see your vision become a reality. Find your voice, create strong connections, and learn to trust your body. Hey Craig, how you going, mate?
Yeah, good. Ian, self?
Really good. Haven't seen each other since school, but somehow managed to sit about 10 metres away from each other at the footy on Saturday night.
Oh, no, mate, crazy, isn't it? The wonders of social media.
Yeah, absolutely. The less said about the Eels season, the better.
Yes.
So we'll move on from that.
Oh, mate, I do refer to myself as a Parramatta sufferer now, not a supporter.
Yes, exactly. Oh, mate. Anyway, yeah, our poor kids. Born into pain.
Yes.
Now, we grew up in the same area, played football in the same sort of local communities and so on. What are your best memories of those times growing up, just kicking around the streets and playing sport?
Oh, just being with your mates was the big one. That was, I just think we were always just active doing stuff. That was the big thing. Playing sports with your mates, and going from primary school to high school was even better, because you got to meet more people, different fields, and that network of playing against people or going to school with people you played against more. So I think that was the big one for me.
Yeah. And some of those games when we got to high school, we were playing against the local club, Normo versus Thornley. When you go to school with them the next day, they're always got a bit heated, right?
Yeah, that's right. It was always fun, though, wasn't it? I think
very good. Now, there's a heap of things I want to sort of touch on with you because you've done a fair bit in the sports industry, but you've also done a fair bit in the training industry as well. And this podcast is all about those lessons in life that we can learn that stretch across all of those boundaries. I'd love to hear about how you get into correctional services and what that experience was like.
All right. How do you get into correctional services? Through sport, believe it or not.
Oh, right. Interesting.
Right, yeah. I was a landscaper by trade after leaving school, did my trade.
Yeah.
And gave up playing the soccer or the football side of things sort of towards the end of high school and just stuck with rugby union then and sort of kept playing rugby as I kept going through out of school, and then just moved around in life and different parts of Sydney through, moved a lot of houses for different rugby clubs I played for. And just sitting down with a bloke that, we'd played a couple of games together at training one night, had a bit of a laugh and, just thought, he's a good bloke. Let's have a bit of it, So what do you do for a living? And he said, I'm a prison officer. I was like, what's that like? And he said, it's a job. He said, the money's pretty good. Well, how good? At the time, I was either running out, there was a leading hand or a foreman landscaper, late 90s, making about $500 a week in the hand. And he said, mate, you'll clear over $2,000 a fortnight.
Yeah,
joined
wow.
the job. I was like, oh, let's give it a crack.
Yeah. Double your pay.
Double the pay, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Still paying for it in a few ways, I think. It's yeah, almost 15 years in the job. So it was a bit of an eye-opener for life.
Yeah, still paying for it? Like you saw some things that you would prefer not to have?
Oh, yeah, you just get exposed to stuff and, yeah, some of the stuff, yeah, still live with it to a degree.
Yeah.
Doesn't bother me, but it's always just there. I think there's still that, I guess you hear the story about the old police officers walking into a pub or a club and there's always that spidey sense going. You think you just, I don't think that'll ever leave me, to be honest.
You're right. So you can kind of get a sense of when there's something's not quite right.
Oh, sometimes a sense, yeah, but it's more so, I think, just, all right, this is where I am. This is where I go to safety. This is where I look for people, sort of just it's an underlying, I guess, awareness more so than a spidey sense that,
Okay. That's not the worst thing to have, right? Is like to be that sort of have that awareness and be having those things in place.
It's good now. Yeah, back then during the job, it was definitely that mentality of if I didn't know you, then I treat you as a criminal, or in my mind at least, I believe you're a criminal, or until I can prove otherwise. Because got into the environment of badness, really.
Yeah. So how did that affect your psyche in everyday life?
It became the normal for quite a while. Don't get me wrong, I had a really good time. I met a lot of good people, made a lot of good friends in that job.
Yeah.
But you do get caught up in that world and that environment. You become more friends with the people you work with. There's more dynamics in that as well. But yeah, you socialise more with prison officers. Footy was my big release. Playing rugby was still the big sort of release to get out every Saturday. I could manage most of my shifts to do that. So that was my outside world.
Now,
so yeah, it was saw a bit of stuff. I saw a fair bit of stuff and got to travel around the state doing a fair few things as well. Seeing parts of the country and dealing with things. But certainly glad to be out of it now, I've got to say.
Yeah, I bet. We don't need to go into the details about those sort of things because I'm sure that's not anything that's going to interest people. Well, maybe some people have that curiosity, but
it's always a curiosity topic. I sort of thing. It's I've been out of it for a while now, and I guess I'm sort of interested in what you do. Obviously, the big thing for me is looking after the mental health of people in those roles. Just as you get stuck in the rut and start in that environment.
Yeah. And so when you moved into training, was that a product of you having gone through your own mental health struggles in that environment, or more what you saw every day with other people?
I sort of fell into training by default, like through that job, training people. It was always sort of an interest, mate. I'll even take that back to high school, to be honest. Being in cadets at Normo, one of our things at cadets was every sort of Tuesday arvo, as you were in there for a year or so, you'd have to run a little training session. 15, 20 minutes on something. And, that side of things was just sort of, I enjoyed it. Never wanted to be a teacher.
No.
And, getting older and then getting into that role and really enjoying, I guess the team side of things in corrections as well was one of the big ones. But, specific roles for specific incidents and training people and helping people doing that was how I got into that side of it. And as I progressed through different parts of the department, fitness became a big thing too. Like, I'd always tried to be fit, but we had certain fitness levels that we had to maintain. And, we ran our own boot camps and even we like to call it CrossFit before it was CrossFit stuff. No trademarks there, sorry, but we were flipping tractor tires and hitting them with sledgehammers and running around with sledgehammers and all that stuff over our heads before CrossFit and that sort of stuff was even around, I think. So
ahead of your time.
Yeah, it was passed down. It wasn't just me that started, that's for sure.
Right.
But it was certainly a good way just to keep you fit and keep you ready to go. That was one of the big things, keeping mentally on top of stuff, but physically on top of stuff too.
Now, something I think people could take a heap out of, because everyone experiences down times mentally. It's just a given. Like if no one's immune from that, what did you learn, one, about yourself, and two, about some of the strategies that are going to help you bring yourself back to parity when you go a bit off track, when you're experiencing some tough times in that environment?
Having someone to talk to, I think, is the communication is one of the big ones. But for a long time for me, it was breaking that stigma of being able to talk. Again, particularly in that environment, it was just one of those things. It's 90% of your male staff there were in that alpha male type thing. So it's bigger, better, stronger all the time, and not managing it. You could see it would happen. People would drink a lot more, socially and that sort of stuff. Very, very sort of tough for, looking back on it now to deal with. I look at, I joined in 2000, it's now 2024. One of the big ones for me. So in those 24 years, I've been out for, well, not far off 10 years now, but, still got mates and stuff there. But in that time, since I've been in that job, there's been 13 officers take their own lives.
It's no good.
So looking back on that now, it is that, having someone to speak to, being able to speak to someone about it, and realizing that it's not a weakness. It's just, it happens to everyone. You have your lows, you have your highs, and you need to reach out to that support that's around, even if you think it's not there. There's always someone there.
Absolutely. And the two things that come to mind there is the relief that you feel when you finally talk about something that you've been holding on to for so long, and the strength that it gives you when you realize that you're not alone in the pain you're going through. Like I think that's the thing, when you get in those dark times, you think, man, I should have my shit together here. I must be the only one going through this. And the reality is that everyone is, and
for sure,
just some are more open to talking about it. So how do you guys now as trainers share that message to make sure that they do know that they can speak up and there are options for them?
Most of the time for me, it's through shared experience. In a way, the product of the environment, so to speak, but moving out of that and being able to train people and help people, and realizing, even going back prior to that, realizing that all your emotions, everything you deal with, comes from a very early age, and we're not all the same. I think the older I get, the more experienced I get. It's more of that, what's normal for me isn't normal for you.
100%.
If I can realize that and help you realize for yourself that your normal isn't the same as mine, the way we even cope and deal with things is very different.
Love that. Yeah, I'm a big believer in that as well, because there's all these, one size fits all solutions, and then people telling you, you got to do it this way and you got to do it that way. Whereas the reality is that you've got to find the recipe that works for you. So absolutely. If you look through that lens that you're just talking, then if someone's in that position now that they're sort of thinking now, well, I want to find that solution for me, what's a step they can take on their own if they're not quite ready to reach out? What's a step they can take on their own to start getting themselves back on track?
For me, it's getting outside and doing something, or pushing yourself out of that cocoon that you start to wrap yourself in, or finding some way to, it can only be a minute, 2 minutes to start with. If you're really, really deep into it, give me a case of just get out of where you are. All right, I don't want to go outside today. I just want to stay in bed.
Yeah.
All right. So today we get out of bed. Or I don't really feel like talking with someone on the phone. All right, well, just send me a text message, say good day, and then we'll build from stuff from there and build those little communication things. That's the communication, but it's the healthier you can be physically, it's going to help you mentally. I'm sure.
100%.
Well,
Yeah. It's got to be a holistic approach, right?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
everything affects everything. If you're letting one part slide, the other part will be impacted, and vice versa.
yeah.
Can you? And I know I'll pry as far as you're prepared to share, but can you share maybe some of the flow-on impacts that it had on your personal life going through some of those darker times within that environment?
Oh, dealing with friends and family, or not dealing with friends and family.
Or you shut yourself off?
Yeah, shutting myself off. Yeah, that was one of the big ones, and that just became the default for everything, really. I think there was always part of that in me in some way, but still functioning. But yeah, if things got to that extreme or get to that extreme, it's easier just to block everything out. Do that. I'll deal with it myself, and you get yourself into that mentality and that little spiral. Pull yourself out of it. You can, and you do. I was lucky enough to do that all the time. But the big one was shutting a lot of people out. Just wanting to disappear and be left alone.
Yeah.
Not really drinking so much. I think a lot of people, I think I mentioned before, a lot of people did get in the drink. I think it was more making yourself socialise and go out, but to socialise there was drinking involved, but it was never, I never had any issues where I had that need to that urge to go and have a drink, but that was the carrot that I sort of dangled myself out. All right, if you go out, you catch up, you'll have a beer, and then you can go home and do that sort of stuff. So
That's good. And the other thought that comes to mind is where the importance of having that community sport aspect in your life is so powerful, right? Because it forces you. You made a commitment. It forces you to get out there and community. And men in particular, from that perspective, we're not always great at keeping that community aspect. And I reckon that's why a lot of men keep playing into a much older age, is because they, not necessarily the sport, but they just don't want to let go of that community aspect, whether consciously or otherwise, they know how important that is for their sanity.
It's that being active, and I think I think a lot of that is personality based. Not everyone's sporty, but we certainly grew up in that world and an environment of sport, and such a big thing. I laugh now when I'm 50 very shortly. I played my last game of rugby when I was 39. I haven't retired. I'm just choosing not to play.
Yeah, I haven't played the last 2 seasons of football. And it's the same thing. I haven't retired, but
I haven't retired because I've still got that footy bag with my boots in it. Still sitting there. It's travelled a lot with me. It's travelled to different places. It's moved from Sydney up to the mid-north coast of New South Wales, and still can't let it go. But I think that's where I've moved into the other world of helping and volunteering around sport, being involved that way. And still keeping fit, but just not having the hits is the big one.
Yeah, absolutely. I can relate to that, definitely. I learned that lesson last time because I've had a few, I have a couple of years off, then go back, and I learned that mistake, getting rid of gear and getting rid of boots, and then realising you just got to go buy them again. So it's the same thing. I've got them in there in the cupboard for a rainy day.
Just in case.
Can't let go. The older I get, I'm finding that the regular weekly game's not real good for your fitness because you can't do anything in between. That's what my experience anyway.
Exactly. Just keep moving now. That's the thing for me. That if you stop too much, you'll stiffen up.
Yeah. So I'm a massive fan of that, giving back to the community. Like community football, community sport in general just relies on that, the group of people that volunteer their time, their energy, like local club sponsors, their money. People give so much to those spaces to create an atmosphere. And I've seen some clubs doing some really good things. Like, what sort of things have you experienced in that sports club atmosphere that you can just tell has made such a positive difference in people's lives?
Oh, mate, the big one for me, I was always involved in rugby, committee level and stuff like that. It was always good to be involved in a club you played with. But I think the thing for me with not playing was, again, that having to disassociate and move away for a while. So I then got into a bit of cycling, but then starting doing group fitness, personal training type stuff. So again, you're helping those people, but then taking those across, and I ended up moving across in the rugby league world. Totally different sport. You know, they're always banging heads about who's the better and who does what. But the just the stuff you see there. It's you know, I'm very lucky and very privileged to work with a couple of pretty good clubs, even this one here. But just seeing the transformation for some of these kids, and you know, when I was living down, you know, around the western and northwestern parts of Sydney, there's some kids who got pretty tough lives. You know,
yeah, absolutely.
Certainly out of the realm of what we ever had. You know, going to school and growing up where we did, or that we were really aware of, and you know, the opportunity that it created for a lot of these kids to actually, you know, they were good at footy, really good at footy. Going to school was never pushed or encouraged for them, or some of them were just, you know, if they didn't want to go to school, they didn't have to. They didn't, you know, but they'd go and play footy, and you create that environment for them to help them out. And again, for me, that was physically fit, helping them be fit. But, you know, when I did a bit of particularly the representative type stuff, was working on the mental toughness side of it. You know, but how sport can help you, you know, while you're training for sport, if you can push through things while you're training, it can help you move on to other things you're dealing with in life, you know. Again, things might feel tough now, but there always is an end, and you can push through it. Yeah. I got called many, many names training people doing stuff, you know, particularly during the physical side of things. They'd call me some pretty horrible names. But, you know, you win a couple of grand finals with some of these kids playing footy, and they say, we hate you when you train us, but we love you for what you're doing for us.
Yeah. It's respect, right?
It's respect, but you know, you get to see the kids grow and just, you know, look forward. And I guess, you know, it's a little bit selfish that you see them enjoying the team environment and the sport thing that I loved growing up.
Yeah.
And that in itself can become a family and a safe place for a lot of kids too, when it's not so safe in other parts of their life.
Absolutely. And to me, yeah, of course, when we give back, there's a selfish element because it feels amazing. Absolutely. If only more people could actually realize just how impactful that is. Even just recently, we've got a club day here, yearly club day, and I'm sending reminder emails to my team about volunteering, and they've been pretty good. Yeah. But I'm looking at the volunteer sheet, and I'm thinking it's the same people who volunteer every week, and it's sad that we have to push, but more sad of the people who are missing out, who aren't getting that benefit of having that, just, yeah, like you described, the joy that you get from having an impact, whether it's in the canteen and being that support for everyone else there at the ground, or it's like you described, the joy and the happiness you hear from youngsters playing sport that may be the only place that they get that in a week. Yeah. It's huge.
Absolutely. You know, it's good fun. You create another community within yourself, or you become part of another community. You're not necessarily creating it, but, you know, if you can build on that, you'll see, you know, like you said, if it's the same ones all the time, eventually people do burn out and lose that passion and enjoyment, and they fall away. I think that's where we sort of don't encourage volunteers enough. They fall away, and then someone else is left to pick up the mantle. Whereas if we can try and build those things better, it certainly has to help people.
Yeah.
We're all busy though. Everyone's busy.
Yeah, but I was listening to someone the other day, and they're like, I bet everyone, if they hand on heart looked at how much time they spend scrolling on their phone, they've easily got an hour a day that they've got spare.
Absolutely. Probably two. They could volunteer for an hour, and then they can go for a walk for an hour as well, you know.
Yeah, and they wouldn't have missed anything of any significance, not on their phone.
Not at all.
Except, of course, references to the podcast.
Well, they're allowed to listen to that while they're, you know, while they're doing their walk or driving to and from training or the ground or volunteering.
Exactly. Yeah, you mentioned that the sort of lowest socio-economic areas of Sydney, and I'm sure that's true of every city in the world, some more so than others. There's a mate of mine who's the CEO of Creating Chances. I don't know if you've heard of them. I'm giving him the gentle nudges to come on and tell their story, but you're doing the same thing, right? Like they're literally creating chances for the rest of their life through that space. Oh, we talked about on one of my posts about Clontarf Foundation, where they're literally closing the gap for Aboriginal boys by giving them that opportunity through sport, but also creating that safe place, the academy, where they can. Some of these kids don't even have birth certificates, so that makes the rest of the
culture as well.
Absolutely, yeah. What work have you done with Clontarf?
Most of that was in the sports trainer world. So I do run sports trainer courses through rugby league. So run a few sports trainer courses for them, just to more so the teachers and the mentors coming in, because particularly regionally, rugby league, regional New South Wales rugby league is a big thing in those Indigenous communities. And if we can get more of these mentors and people in that Clontarf Foundation going along, the kids can play footy more. It's a good chance again for the kids to play footy. Kids will start talking when they're doing something and they're physically active. If there's other issues going on, they're not just going to walk up to an adult and start saying this and this and this is going on. But you get them busy doing stuff and challenges arise, things come up. So helping just doing those stuff for the guys in the Clontarf Foundation was really a positive thing, knowing all the work they do within the schools.
Yeah, the flow through that impact.
The flow through effect, yeah.
So I'd love for you to share, Craig, maybe one of the best lessons that sport has taught you, from anywhere from a young age all the way through to now, that you've taken forward into other areas of your life.
Well, one of the best ones. You could ask Craig, I reckon, every 5 years about that, and it would all change, I think.
Yeah.
As I've got older. I think for me now, it's twofold. Learning to be part of a team, but it's also okay to lose, but lose gracefully. One of the big ones for me, You transfer that to life, pretty much everywhere you go, work-wise or anything else, you are going to be involved in some form of team, and you need to function as a team member. But you also need to know that you're not going to get that job. You're not going to get that promotion sometimes. Someone else is going to beat you, or your boss/coach is going to come in and say, you're not performing at the moment. Not to spit the dummy and lose it. Learn from it. All right. How can I improve? It's all about that improvement for me. I guess that's the... You can do those two things. Don't get me wrong, it's great to win.
Yeah.
I think most people remember the good wins of the grand finals, but I think I learned a lot more from the grand finals I lost than the ones I won.
Absolutely. I've been saying that I'm coaching under 18s football this year, it's of course football, but so much more about life. Last year we had a winning season. Mm-hmm. I don't reckon they've learned anywhere near as much in the 5 rounds of football we've had this year, from like going through really tough defeats, like big defeats, a couple of wins along the way as well. But what they're learning about themselves as people, and because the reality is that in life that there's winners and losers in different areas, but that doesn't mean that you're not getting success, right? And if we mark success in a different way, and that's part of the process, I'm sure that's part of it when you're training other trainers, is to help them not lose sight of actually what the end goal is, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the big one when I deal with sports trainers, even coaches in particular, like sporting coaches now. It's, I often ask, when I run my trainers courses in particular, it's one of my first questions is, who here's played any form of sport in their life? And generally, 95% of the room has. Next question is, all right, who's won a grand final? And most of the time, you get most of the, probably 70% of that 95% putting their hand up. I was like, how old were you when you won your first grand final? And you get anything from sort of under sixes up to under 18s. There's a few that are into their 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
And my next question for them is, where does that grand final sit on your resume to get a job?
Oh, nice.
And they're like, whoa, it talks about teamwork. And I was like, no, winning a grand final doesn't talk about teamwork. Playing team sport talks about teamwork.
Yeah.
Winning a grand final is the result of possibly a lot of talent all working together. And, don't get me wrong, it's a great feeling, but it doesn't mean that because you've lost a grand final, you're less of a team player than someone who has won a grand final.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, it is just a game.
Yeah.
You have to enjoy it.
Yeah.
You look at the professional side of sport, all right? And you look at that Parramatta game that we may have both been at on Saturday night. All those players on the field for Para that lost, they were upset about losing. Right?
Yeah.
But they go, they chat to the guys they know on the other teams, they have a laugh and everything else, and it's next job for them. Us as the supporters who carry on that personal legacy, that buy-in, and have that real involvement of this passion. And, these guys don't have any passion about what of course they have passion about what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it's a job for them. For us, it's something that we're more emotionally invested in than, in a different way to what they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think if you look at it from a supporter, it's because we don't feel like we have any control. And Absolutely. So when we see their reaction, it's like, hang on, you're the guys who actually can do something about this, and that's how you're reacting. Yeah. And I think there's also an element of our generation, like we got brought up a very different way. So we would have sat there feeling sorry for ourselves for a couple of hours. And sometimes it was the next day or the day after as well for me after some of those seniors games. Whereas they're more like, well, they know they've just got to get back to it, and they've just got to rip in the next week, and they've got a process to follow. And it's well, I mean, anyone's only going to sat on any supporter forum or Facebook group, and they see it's like it's actually a place for people to regulate their emotions. I reckon. I don't reckon it's a particularly healthy way to do it.
I don't think there's much regulation of emotions. I think it's just a lot of venting a lot of the time. But going back to that learning to lose is all these professionals.
Yeah,
they sit down for video sessions. There's people that are paid to go through that frame by frame, and they'll pull all of those players in individually.
Yeah, and
highlight those things that us fans see. Go, if he hadn't done that, we would have won the game, and blah blah blah. They get told that in a totally different manner. All right, if you couldn't regulate yourself and as a professional, again, it's just work. If they can't take that criticism on board and try and work with it and improve from it, then the same thing's going to happen.
Absolutely. I'm curious what you know about team culture, given all the work that you've done working with people who are in charge of teams. Like, if you've been in any sporting environment, there are some teams where you've got this eclectic group that have no right to mix, and yet you can have some of the best years, right? There's one particular year I can remember in my football where we just had the strangest mix, but somehow it just worked. And we've still got, all of us have still got such a tight bond now. We had a winning season, which also helps, but it was more around, just how it all gelled. So what have you learned about what an individual needs to bring to a team environment like that to create an atmosphere that's going to be beneficial for everyone?
Oh, it's a willingness, I think, again, to be part of the team and not think you are the team.
Well, that's good.
You can have all these individuals there that are great individually, but put them together as a team and they don't work.
Yeah.
And there has to be some form of trust, I think, as well. From more, as a player in particular, trust the person that you're playing with, know that they're going to do their job. You have an understanding of what everyone else's role is too, and practice. If you don't train and you don't practice, you're not going to work out those fine things that are going to make you mesh together as a group. You don't even necessarily have to socialise or have the same beliefs or anything like that at all. It's just a case of, the process to a degree, but working those interpersonal dynamics as well with the players.
Yeah,
some people just don't get on, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But if you're on the same team, let's get on and do our job on the field. I think the days of, the rugby days of, having a beer with everyone, that was sort of how I grew up when I was playing union in particular.
Yeah.
But I think that's sort of changing slightly now too. People are off doing their own things and busy doing their own lives. So it's a different cultural setup in a way.
Same principles apply though when they get in those team environments. So can you share from your experience what you've learned about how you actually build trust in those team environments? Because for some people that is almost effortless. For other people that can, whether it's a personality thing, whether it's from past experiences of having trust betrayed, but how do you sort of foster that essence of trust within a team environment? If you're looking at this from a personal perspective from your experience, but also as a trainer.
Being reliable and being accountable.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, turning up when you say you're going to turn up, or if you're not going to turn up, being honest and not, if we know training's on at 7 o'clock, you don't send a message, or these days to send a message, but you don't make the call 5 minutes beforehand. All right. If you don't feel like turning up to training, all right, and you're going to make up a crap excuse, don't make it up 5 minutes beforehand. Just let us know 3 hours beforehand so that we can arrange it. Be accountable when you come back. Sorry, guys, I wasn't up to it. And, but being accountable for your actions on the field too. At training, make the mistakes at training. Do those things, and I think that takes you a long way. So,
absolutely, I'm a massive fan of that accountability, and in the coaching space, there's a fair bit of noise around. Well, you need to be self-accountable, and to a certain degree, you absolutely do. But I think about the times I've thrived. It's been in a team environment where there's a desire to be accountable to yourself because of that commitment to other people, and there's also like other people there who are holding you to account for the standards that you've set as a team. And even if you're not like particularly sporty, it's being immersed in that environment where you can raise your level of trust. You mentioned that word, of reliability, of cohesion. Like that's those things where they're just there. As you mentioned earlier, you're going to be in teams in lots of different areas, and being able to take those transferable skills, huge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Healthy competition within that group.
Yeah.
As long as it remains healthy and doesn't turn toxic.
Yes.
And I think you can't train the desire for people to want to improve, and if those people don't have that desire, you have to find a way to put those challenges to them where they can buy in to the process that your team, your group, your work group is going through. That's the skill of a good coach, a good trainer.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the motivator for the person in that role?
Yeah, and you think about some of the better coaches in the world of sport, they're people first, right?
Yes. Yeah, well, they understand the people they're working with. They probably don't come across as a people person to most others, but that's, your Wayne Bennett is, I think, the ultimate example.
Classic, yeah.
He knows his players. He makes sure to know what's going on with those people, and makes them accountable to themselves, but to him, and he fosters that an individual relationship with each of them where, they almost get the feeling of not wanting to let him down. It's not a guilt trip. It's just he invests so much confidence and stuff in me that, I want to improve because I know it will make me better. It will make him better, or make the team better.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm thinking about like just the world of sport at the moment. It's like you look at English Premier League, like Pep and Jurgen Klopp, they're about people. Ange has joined in there. He's much the same sort of culture. I think they'll be successful. I don't know a lot about the Villa manager, but he must be doing some great things. I heard Ollie Watkins interviewed. He was talking about like the impact of the manager. And I just think if people don't adopt this new approach and make it about trying to hit that way of connecting with each individual, then they're going to get left behind, whether it's in sport or whether it's in corporate, business, family, everything. Yeah. It's no longer a case of, no, everyone's just got to get on board with my way and that's just how it's going to be. It just doesn't work anymore.
No, that's the old authoritative type leadership style, which, it only works in a very few circumstances. And most of that is still really based in the military world. And that's only because, I shouldn't just say the military world, but any of that sort of enforcement type world, when the decision has to be made and actions need to be done on command without being questions because of the safety and the issue that's ahead. But in the general business world and the work world, it's back to that old school. I'm a teacher. You do what I say because I'm a teacher.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Or
I'd be interested though, and you can speak from experience here, in those areas like enforcement, correctional, military, in the moment, it has to be very much follow the order and bang you go. But when you're in the training element, there'd have to be a real focus on building that trust and that camaraderie. Otherwise, it just wouldn't work in the heat of battle, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why it was the whole training, physically training, training as a group or there's a fitness standard there. So challenging each other whilst you're doing your fitness tests and meeting your fitness standards. But when you're doing the actual training drills and practicing those things, we used to practice cell extractions a lot. All right. So offenders didn't want to leave their cell for whatever reason, potentially armed up or just ready to fight whoever was going in there. We'd have a team that would go in. So we would practice that.
Yeah, right.
And we would take it in turns. One of us would be the mock offender and the team of three would go in and, we would bash the what out of each other a lot harder than what we ever did when we went in because we planned for everything by doing it.
You're right.
You knew, we'd run all these different tips and tricks that we knew that most of these people we would ever do that extraction on would never be able to do. But by just trying to, I guess, away in your ego, be the one person beating those three with all the gear coming in, you learn from that. You practice that as well. And then the debrief afterwards. That's where, the big learning comes from.
I guess there's an element of it's highly unlikely, but you've got to try and cover all bases.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's I like to call it the what if game. What if this happens?
Yeah.
But by training in that sort of world, that's where you did build the trust, like you were saying. Doing that thing, you had the confidence in your equipment, but also in those around you. And then you had those teams there. We could, all right, we all know what we're going to do. Yes, there'd be a leader there and the decision maker, but most of the time, everyone knew their role by that stage, and there wasn't too much to think about.
Yeah. You just done it so many times before. I did like you mentioned about the ego side of things, wanting to be. There's still a competitive element about it, right? Wanting to be the one there.
Absolutely. It's a lot of alpha males in those worlds, So put all of them in a room, you're going to get a lot of competition. If you don't manage that correctly, it could turn toxic.
Now, I'm going to have to ask a little bit of this because I'm sure listeners are somewhat curious. Was there a time where that ego, you either experienced it yourself, where that might have got you into trouble in a situation in a correctional facility, or you saw it from another officer?
Again, probably the more experienced I got in the job, it would be seeing the change from a person initially coming into the job.
Right.
And then that sort of transformation, particularly if you knew them. There were a few people, I knew over the years that joined that, they got the uniform and became bulletproof because of the uniform.
Interesting.
And that extra training. It was always curbed by the peers around them, but it was just one of those sort of feelings and things that people had. I think it happens in, I guess in a way, even in sport. You have your people that they step over the line, they get the white line fever. It's a very sort of similar thing. That was one of the things you would see, or people trying to prove themselves when there's no need to.
You're right. Interesting. I'm fascinated by this idea of the moment they put the uniform on, it created this identity, because I literally just did a post on this this afternoon where we're talking about the different identities that we take on. I speak to a lot of people that they're like, maybe their kids have grown up and they're like, I don't really know who I am, like without being the parent, and now what? And there's a heap of different, like athletes when they finish up, like,
yes,
okay, who am I? So I imagine as a trainer, you've had to get pretty clear on who you are and how you operate, because to be good at what you do, you need to have an awareness around that. So if I'm to ask you about your identity, and you've worn so many different hats, like what is it, the essence of who you are that makes you not just good as being a trainer, but a good mate, a good volunteer in a community, a good dad?
Oh, for me, humor's one of the big ones for me. And, I like, making people happy, making people feel comfortable. But in the same circumstance, if you're in a training environment where, you're still that authority in a way, it's you've got to be firm but fair, but be personal. I don't want to be that. I never wanted to be that arsehole, big stick person. Back to the childhood thing. Children used to always you're only ever allowed to speak when you were spoken to. I'm certainly very anti that. It's be approachable, be able to be, to communicate with different groups of people and have an understanding. And I guess for me, it's working out when you're training people, the motivators behind those that you're working with.
Love it.
But also, why are they there for the training? But, what else is going on around them that I can keep them engaged with what we're doing.
I love that. And to me, that's such an important part of being able to build trust and to be able to create that unity. So again, if you're putting yourself in the place of the listener at the moment, what are some questions they can ask themselves to start having a think about what it is that actually motivates them? Because I'm sure there's people listening going, man, you're working out how we're motivated, but I can't even work it out myself.
Well, what have you done before that you liked doing? What makes you happy? I think that's one of the big ones. Is
simple, right?
It's very simple. It's we've started saying a lot around here now at home and with my in-laws and stuff up here is you only die once. You've got to start living every day.
Love it.
You might have heard that before, but it's normally you only ever live once. But no, we live every day. We need to start living more. We need to start enjoying. Don't make things so serious. We take everything too seriously. We take stuff we see on our phone too seriously. We take a step back. Have that fun, all right, and then find out what you enjoy, and then how can you bring that into what you're doing, whether it's for work, whether it's for sport, whether it's for some sort of social outlet or release.
Love it.
If you're 50 years old and you're like, I've always wanted to play guitar, go and play guitar. Go and get one. Just do it.
Yeah.
Don't die wondering,
I
think.
Yeah. I love that. There's guitars littered all over this house.
Yes.
I played occasionally, but but at least people having a crack.
I do joke with my fiance. She says, when are you going to sell one of your guitars? I say, no, I don't need to do that. They're actually cheaper than therapy.
Oh, very good. Very good. Hey, Craig, when you were young, did you have a sporting dream? Like, did you have dreams of making it in a sport? Like, do you remember anything like that?
When I was really young, I was right into my soccer. I started playing soccer when I was, sorry, I should say football for the listeners as well. The round ball game, I started playing when I was 5.
Yeah.
And I had this dream. I was, pretty handy, pretty good player back when I was a young fella, and just thought, what can I do here? And there was that, I'll go over and play, over in England. That was sort of the big thing there for a while.
Yeah.
And then I transferred across to rugby, and was like, I know I started playing rugby too late to get anywhere of any sort of reasonable level, but I had the opportunity to go and play like in the grade comp, like the Shoot Shield comp in Sydney. And
It's a decent level.
It is a decent level, but
Yeah.
I was having too much fun with my mates and socialising. So that was sort of wasn't a dream. It was it was just that, I'm just enjoying what I'm doing now. I got to that stage, I think, where I realised I wasn't going to get anywhere crash hot, and having more fun playing with my mates. But yeah, back to the soccer one, I was definitely playing, going playing over in the UK somewhere. I remember playing in, I think it was like an under 7s team. And I think that might have been under 6s. No, it was under 7s, 82 World Cup, I think, from memory.
Yeah.
And the coach we had went and got us these like long sleeve jerseys like they all wore on TV over there. And like we just thought that we were the best.
Oh, how good. Oh, mate, if I'd seen that, I would have been that jealous. Why was it? It was because the TV, right? We wanted the long sleeve.
It was just that long sleeve. I still remember that feeling that felt different to those cotton scratchy ones. It was like, this is like, I remember even going to news, like we used to still tell news. I think it was in year 2 in 82. So it was like, what'd you do on the weekend? Oh, we got these new soccer jerseys. And I remember waffling on for ages about this sort of stuff. And I had one other mate in my class at the time who played with me, and we were just there just talking to each other. And I was just standing out the front of the class.
So good.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it funny? You look back at those times where how you looked at the world. In so many ways, it's a good way to see the world, right? Just the simple things.
Absolutely. I remember. I think it was the same year writing I think I'd watched a news thing. It would have been on the rugby league boys, on the para boys, probably when they were all either running around behind garbage trucks as part of their fitness or being brickies labourers. And I was like, what, I'm going to play soccer. I'm going to play, over in England, and I'm going to be a garbo and, run around behind a garbage truck to keep fit, and then go and play soccer and, never have to work. Then I'll just play soccer and I'll be laughing.
Living the dream.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you remember the old player profiles on the footy? Profession, garbologist.
Brickies labourer.
Fantastic. Good times. What do you reckon the best, the number one positive impact that sports had on your life?
People, meeting people, being around people.
Yeah.
People that you probably wouldn't meet anywhere else in your life, but you'd have that one common interest. That's the unifier, I guess, that, whether you're playing sport, again, you can break it down to supporting a team. You can walk to any sporting field in the world wearing the supporter jersey of one club or another, whether you've ever been there or not. You'll see someone else with that common thing, and you'll meet them. It's a talking point, and it becomes a connection. It becomes a way to, meet other people.
Yeah. And just made me think of a memory. We were watching the Wallabies in Paris, 98, and communicating best we could to French rugby fans who could barely speak any English, but we've both got our jerseys on, and we're there's a connection there around a common cause, and probably a couple of beers involved as well. But it's like, that's the power of sport, right? It can cross boundaries that wouldn't be possible otherwise.
Yes, I do have a drinking related one that I could probably tell to you about that. Very similar.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, go
We
on.
went to the old Super 10s, used to play at the old football stadium here in
Yeah,
Sydney.
yeah.
And you get people from everywhere then. And, we went on a Friday night. I'll never forget it because we had to play on the Saturday. But it was when they brought out, Sambuca and Galliano brought out those different coloured ones.
Yeah.
And so we called it I think it was the Six, or it was Five Nations was the European version. And then we made it the Eight Nations because they had all those different coloured ones. So everyone had a shot of the black Sambuca for the All Blacks, and then the white Sambuca for England, and then the Galliano, the gold for the Wallabies, and then there was a green one for Ireland and a blue one for Scotland. And I don't even know how we made it home, but the whole bar of this pub, we didn't. There was about four of us. One of my mates started. He was a prop, so he was a mad drinker.
You got the whole bar
after
involved.
the first shout, the whole bar's in on it. This is the captain cook after one of the games. So again, just that we were there for the rugby. Everyone was there for a beer afterwards, and then someone started a game, and next thing you know, you're cheersing people and having a good laugh with someone you never met in your life.
We don't condone irresponsible service of alcohol, of course.
No, not at all. No, there wasn't such a thing, and this was back in the 90s. So
exactly.
Previous lifetime.
We learned lots from those lessons as well.
That's right, learning from your mistakes, as we discussed earlier.
Exactly. Probably shouldn't drink like that before a game.
No.
Oh dear. What about the most valuable transferable skill, Craig? And I ask this because I look back on so many of the things that I've learnt about myself now. I realized I actually started learning them in sport, whether it was like leadership, finding my voice, how to connect as a team, like you talked about, like so many that you can build on later, but the foundation's very much in sport. So can you think of a couple of those transferable skills that have really been impactful from you that you've learned from a young age?
Yeah, I think you said leadership. That's one of the big ones, I think. And even, after doing a lot of work in the communication training type world as well, he's realizing those different types of leaders. In sport, I think particularly when you're younger, it was generally the best player was made the captain initially, and then you had more your inspirational type leaders that were picked because of the way they could pick the team up and actually motivate them during the game. Yeah. And then there were the ones who just made everyone part of the team. They weren't the best player, they weren't the most talkative one, but they got everyone together and kept the team as a team when things could have gone sideways. So definitely leadership, but I think commitment as well.
Yeah.
Commitment
to yourself.
Commitment to yourself, but commit to the training,
Yeah.
And buying in, once you've bought in, finishing up on the task, even if you are getting smacked every week and you're losing, the club I was talking about just before with our little drinking games, and we were certainly the club I was with at the time, and they only played for 2 years. The second season of them, I was playing 3 games a weekend because we just didn't have the players. Out of those 3 teams for 2 years, we won 1 game.
Wow.
But we had the best time.
Yeah, I bet.
And that was all through just committing and, all right, you know what, the chips are down. We're playing this team. Chances are that we're going to get absolutely smashed again, but you turn up, you do it. And you learn from it.
Yeah, and it comes back to something you mentioned very early on, is like that sports, like you need to lose gracefully, but there's also, just because you're not winning doesn't mean you're not getting success. Like you're having an awesome experience together and you're having to dig in, and you learn so much about yourself in those times. And it's also how you can then come together to make it about something more than just results on the board. I love that.
That's right. Yeah. Enjoy it, have fun. Like I said before, we're still having fun. would have been more fun if we'd won, but we still made the most of it.
Yeah, yeah. You find other ways to win, right? Whether it's a
Oh,
team you're supporting or just other shenanigans in different situations. What do you see for your future in sport, Craig? Or will it always have a part to play in your life?
Yeah, I can't step away from it. I've tried. There's an itch somehow. It's just, I've got to be around. I think part of that's still the young testosterone in me, even to, the just wanting to play or being around it, just the atmosphere of it. And for me, just helping out those teams, helping, I don't want to be one of those grumpy old blokes that's helping these young kids on the sideline and stuff there, but, I've been lucky enough to be involved with some pretty good elite programs and being able to share that with people who, just those experiences to help them out and give them a bit of a, this is what you can do. You can come from here and do this and have a go, but, the ones who have made it through to that elite level, I can tell you the attributes and the things that they did, and this is what you need to aim towards to get there.
Can you share what some of those attributes are?
Nice manners was one of the big ones, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Respectful all the time.
Awesome.
Certainly committed to themselves. Very, they could have had really big egos, but they didn't. Never, certainly confident, but not rude about it. I suppose that's when I talk about being respectful in a way.
Yeah.
But they just did all the little things. They took all the advice on board from all, when you start getting to that elite level sort of football side of things, you're getting a lot of external noise, whether it's parents or friends or whatever else. You should do this, you should do that, blah, blah, blah. They trusted the group around them, that were there to train them at the time, particularly in the recovery for some of these younger kids that, were getting injured, do their rehab properly. If you, once you've finished training, do your proper cool down, do your proper stretching. When you turn up, have a laugh with your mates, but when it's time to warm up. But the kids that made it through, that are playing NRL now, they were always there 20 minutes before. They were out on the field 20 minutes before, doing all their things that they'd been told to do without being pushed to do it. It wasn't, all right, we're doing this now. There was never a groan or an, oh, shit, why are we doing this? It was, they wanted to be there. And,
that's good.
You get a lot of kids that are naturally talented, all right, that don't do the hard work, and you'll have a lot of kids that are, talented still, probably not as gifted, but work harder to improve, to get better.
Yeah,
they can do that.
Love that. So those words that come to mind when you say all of those things is commitment, reliability, accountability, and that desire to be part of a team and building those connections. And so there you go. Whether it's at elite level or whether it's just at a personal level, the same language, right? Yeah,
it's exactly the same. And the other one was they never blamed anyone else when something went wrong.
Oh, full responsibility.
Full responsibility. Put their hand up when they made a mistake, but if someone else made a mistake, they just roll with it. I think you probably see it a lot now at an elite sport level. Someone makes a mistake now and they all go around and turn around and say, mate, it's all right, fix it up next time, but I think if you watch, particularly rugby league side of things, the ones who make those mistakes, they get gathered around, but you can see the guys that actually have it in them, that they take ownership of it. They don't even want the person patting them on the back saying you didn't do it again. Yeah. There's the ones that get angry about it, but there's the ones who just, all right, next job, fix it up, do it again. They're the professionals of the professionals.
I love it, and it's a big message when I'm coaching youngsters, actually even as adults as well. It's exactly like you described then. It's the responsibility. You're going to make mistakes, and that's true in football or any sport or life or whatever. It's how you respond, right?
Or anything.
Absolutely.
It's going to happen. You can drag your heels and put your bottom lip on the ground, or you can, learn from it and move on. You can't change what's happened in the past. You can only learn from it.
So good. Craig, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your wisdom, sport, life, all areas. Really appreciate it, and really enjoyed this chat. Thank you, mate.
No, I have too, Ian. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We'll make sure all your details go in there. If anyone's looking for a trainer, Mid-North Coast, or I'm sure you're actually available all over the place, right?
Yeah, I'll float around everywhere. Yes,
yeah, good man. Thanks, bud. I appreciate it.
No worries, mate. Thank you.
All right, mate. As you can probably tell by the amount of laughter that went on there, I actually really enjoyed recording that episode. Craig and I went to school together. We have a shared love of the Eels, as was mentioned. I love how he described how you can overcome some of those challenges from your past and really start finding ways to improve yourself, which you then can ultimately be able to give back and help other people do the same. So the lesson to take from today's episode to add to your game plan is making sure you have an element of that as well. Through everything that you learn, come from a place of giving back, being able to pass on those messages, and you're going to get so much out of your work and out of your life. If you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe. If you haven't joined the Sport is Life movement, do that. The link's in the show notes. And I've got some free training that's happening in there. So it's a good place to be for you to continue to extend your learning and your ability to continue to hit your full potential. You've taken the time to listen to this whole episode. Now it's time to take action. Commit to one thing you've learned today and make it happen. And to avoid any obstructions, join the Sport is Life movement by clicking on the link in the show notes.